In this video, I want to talk about your choice of recommenders. And I want to begin by saying that this is a really important aspect of your application and not just another item on the checklist. Because your recommenders can add a perspective to your application that you yourself cannot. For example, they can talk about how well you work with other people, which is one of the most important parts, in fact, of your candidacy. It will be not very believable for you to say, or effective for you to say, people just love to work with me. But your recommender can say that, and he will be believed. And he can go into detail and explain why people like to work with you and why you are an effective team worker or even leader of a team. So the number one criterion when picking a recommender is that the recommender should know you well, because only then can he or she go into the detail that is needed to persuade the admissions committee that you really have the skills that he or she is talking about. And a lot of recommendations end up like generic praise if the recommender doesn't know you well and is just someone you like or someone high up in the company. But the second criterion is of course also an important one. The recommender should wish you well, because without that, the recommender isn't going to put in the effort to go into all the detail and explain why you are such a great candidate. Or the recommender may even sabotage you by giving you low rankings on the ranking grid. So the two most important criteria are that the recommender should know you well and should wish you well. But I can already hear your first question, because for a recommender to know you well, you very quickly end up with your supervisor. And I can hear you say, oh, but my supervisor is going to be so upset that I'm leaving his team. He won't be willing, or she won't be willing, to write a good recommendation for me. I just can't ask. This is one of the most often heard concerns when it comes to recommenders. The concern that the recommender is going to be too upset that you're leaving for an MBA. But you're going to be leaving your supervisor's team or your manager's team at one point anyway, and your manager knows that. And if he or she is a good manager, he will know that this is happening, and he will know that it's in his interest to have you leave with a good feeling to a good spot. So in most of these cases, we're going to tell you that your concern is not warranted, but there are situations, I have to admit, where your supervisor may not be the best recommender. And those are cases where someone tells me, but I know that my supervisor in the past sabotaged applications of my colleagues. He's just a bit of an unreliable, tricky person who mainly thinks about himself and has a vindictive streak. Well, in that case, I don't have a good feeling anymore. Another situation is where you just got a promotion and your supervisor worked really hard to help you get that promotion, hoping that you would stay 1 or 2 years in that role. And now, right after getting that promotion, you're going to tell him, hey, I'm leaving the team, can you write a recommendation for me? That can be a bit of a slap in the face, and also one of the reasons why you may indeed be better off with someone else as your recommender. Another question we get quite a bit is, how important is someone's position in the company? Shouldn't I go with a VP or an SVP or someone as high up as possible? Well, as I said, the two most important criteria are the person should know you well and the person should wish you well. If those criteria are satisfied, then it's great if someone has a position high up in the company, because of course the recommendation will just be a bit more authoritative and the person will have a greater pool of peers to compare you against. But if the person doesn't know you well, then the recommendation is not going to be effective. So the advice still stands: knowing you well and wishing you well overrules someone's position in the company. The only remark I have to make is that ideally the person should not be your peer, but should be in a role higher than your current role, unless the school says that they welcome recommendations from peers. The same reasoning holds true for the question, is it a good idea if someone is an alum of the school that I'm applying to? Yes, if the person knows you well and wishes you well, then the fact that the person is an alum for that particular school can definitely be a plus, and the person should certainly talk about that in his or her recommendation. And you could even mention the fact more generically in other recommendations. As someone who has an MBA from a top program myself, I know what it takes to succeed, and I think Louise really has the skills it takes to succeed. The final concern that we get quite a bit is, but I have a family business and I report to my mother or my father. Well, they're not going to be your best recommenders for obvious reasons. So you need to think about someone else. By the way, we don't recommend you cheat by picking an uncle in the family business who just happens to have a different surname. So then your options would be, for example, to think about a client that you have a long-standing relationship with, a supplier, or another business partner. They can write really good recommendations. They might need a little bit more support since it's not an in-company recommendation, but we've seen wonderful letters come from somewhat more unusual recommenders.